Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently studying the scripture Mysticism of Ramayana. Commentary is by my Guruji Swami Jyotirmayananji, narrated by myself Swami Nikhilananda. We are currently on Ayodhya Kand, where Bharata had gone to get Lord Rama back from the forest. Ramayana emphasizes that on the path of devotion, one must see the divine hand behind everything that happens in the world. Kaikeyi's actions brought great suffering to the kingdom, but without her, Ravana, the king of demons, would not have been killed. What seems pathetic and terrible from one angle of vision seems desirable and uplifting from another. All human beings are like puppets expressing the divine intent. No matter how provoked or insulted an aspirant may be, no matter how much his ego suffers, he must always remember that the one who insults him is God. It is the divine self who is behind every name and form, and it is under the influence of the divine plan that the karma of an individual makes him appear as a friend or a foe. A devotee should not hold any grudge against any human being, nor blame anyone for being the cause of his misery. If you receive a pleasant message through a telephone, you do not garland the phone with great affection and love. And if the same phone brings you an unpleasant message, you do not smash it or break it. Both behaviors clearly would be ridiculous. Much in the same manner, a devotee must realize that all human beings are like telephones. They are merely mediums for the expression of an inherently compassionate divine will. The divine plan needs actors and actresses who are qualified to play all kinds of parts. If you are qualified to play the part of a rogue, then that part is given to you. Kaikeyi was well qualified karmically for her inimical role in the universal drama, while others, due to their self-effort of the past, deserved the more inspiring roles of sages and saints and devotional personalities. As long as the mind of an aspirant does not recognize these spiritual facts and remains colored by raga and dvesha, which is attachment and hatred towards others, he will not be able to experience the joys of divine love and make meaningful strides towards saintliness. Let's move to the episode where another party of pilgrims arrive. Time passed sweetly for everyone in such divine association, but the purpose of Bharat's visit loomed heavily in the minds of all. Finally, Bharata approached Rama with humility and asked him whether or not he would return to Ayodhya. Honoring his dear brother and perfect devotee, Rama said he would leave it up to Bharata to decide what course of action would be best. Just at this suspenseful time, King Janaka, accompanied by his royal family, ministers, and many people from Janakpuri, arrived on the scene to help Bharata in his mission of bringing Rama back to Ayodhya. Together, the pilgrims from Janakpuri and Ayodhya enjoyed the association with Rama, Lakshmana, and Sita immensely. Although no one could forget the purpose for which they had come, none dared bring it up. That was the subject of Rama's coronation. All waited for Bharata to take command of the situation. Knowing that he had complete power over Rama because of the strength of his devotion, Bharata realized that he now bore a great responsibility. He would have to affirm a course of action that would be in accord with Rama's divine will and the laws of righteousness, not in accord with his original one-pointed desire to bring Rama back from the forest. Finally, Bharata approached Rama with his heart filled with love, and Rama instructed him to endure the suffering that had come upon him and rule the kingdom as their father had desired. He further reassured Bharata that Guru Vasishtha and King Janaka would help him carry out his responsibilities in an excellent manner. At last, enjoying the peace of complete surrender to divine will, Bharata poured the sacred waters that he had carried with him for Rama's forest coronation ceremony into a special nearby well. That well, according to the words of sage Atri, would become a great pilgrimage center for the inspiration of all devotees. In order to give additional sustenance to Bharata, Rama gave him his wooden sandals to keep until he returned from exile. Bharata received the gift with great reverence by putting them on his head, for having those sandals was like having Rama himself nearby. When the pilgrims from Janakpuri and Ayodhya began the journey back to their cities, Sita, Rama and Lakshmana realized sadly that they would be parted from their loved ones for a long period of time. However, they knew that by staying in the forest, they were fulfilling Dashratha's promise to Kaikeyi and at the same time following the divine mission for which they had incarnated, destroying Ravana. When Bharata and the people of Ayodhya returned home, Bharata instructed his ministers and trusted servants in their various duties. Then he called his younger brother Shatrugna and entrusted to Shatrugna the care of their mothers, the queens of the palace. With the permission of the mothers and of Guru Vashisht, Bharata then did a most unusual thing for a king. He retired to a village some miles away from Ayodhya and installed those two sandals of Rama on a makeshift throne. There, in the village of Nandigram, living as an ascetic, Bharata began to rule the country in Rama's absence. While doing so, he constantly worshipped those two sandals which he revered as the symbol of his divine brother. So like Bharata, every aspirant moves through this world process with definite desires and inclinations. So this is the mystical meaning of this episode. As he advances, however, the devotee realizes with the help of his spiritual preceptor or guru that he must let go of his egoistic desires and become a channel of divine will. Surrendering oneself to divine will is the most desirable development from a spiritual point of view. Yet, it is extremely difficult to do. In order to surrender profoundly and truly, the mind must develop such a state of purity and subtlety that it can see the difference between the vision that is sustained by the ego and the universal vision that goes beyond the plane of ego. Only when the mind can clearly see that difference will it reject ego and allow the divine will to flow through it. In the transition from ego consciousness to divine consciousness, a devotee inevitably experiences much inner conflict and tension. To understand this better, think of human consciousness as a little compartment of a railway train and consider the divine plan as the whole train. Well, the little compartment is being linked to the whole train. There is great rattling and agitation. But after the linking is complete, the movement becomes smooth. Similarly, during the process of attuning oneself with cosmic will, there are many abrupt reactions in one's mind and heart. It is a time of spiritual struggle, at times painful, at times thrilling, at times simply confounding. But when the goal is attained, one becomes a perfect flute in divine hands, and the melody of peace flows beautifully through the heart of a devotee with no egoistic obstruction. This inner struggle and its resolution is poignantly portrayed by the soul searching practiced by Bharata until he ultimately realized that his one-pointed determination to bring Rama back was wrong from a higher divine perspective. By the time Bharata reached this conclusion, there was no longer any question about whether or not he would surrender to Rama or Rama would surrender to him. The will of God and the will of devotee had become one. Om Tat Sat.